Amanda, welcome to Locked In. Thanks so much for traveling from. Do you still live in Kentucky now? Okay, from the sticks of Kentucky out to Connecticut. Is this your first time in Connecticut?
I've been here once, but it was driving through to Maine. So, yeah. I stopped at a gas station before. That's my Connecticut knowledge.
Well, before we dive into your story, I'd love for you to plug the organization you work for and what your role is there now, so people hear that at the top of this episode.
Yeah, so I'm the Senior Director of National Campaigns at dream.org. Find us at dream.org. Join us, and I run our Public Health is Public Safety campaign.
That's so cool. And we'll have the link to all that in the description of this episode, too. Years ago, did you ever think you'd have that title?
No.
Did you think you'd be doing what you're doing now?
No, I never even dreamed it. No, it wasn't even on my radar.
It's pretty crazy how life works.
Mm-hmm.
Did you grow up in Kentucky?
Yeah, so I grew up in Kentucky, out in Appalachia. So eastern Kentucky. It's actually where Lyndon B. Johnson years ago started the war on poverty. That's what we're famous for, the county I was from. And unfortunately, it looks a lot like it used to. There hasn't been a whole lot of movement. So back in the day, there were a lot of coal mines, things of that nature. Since then, those have shut down. And unfortunately, we haven't switched over to, new jobs. Hopefully, one day with clean energy, hopefully my community, get some of those opportunities.
Were your mom and dad both in the picture growing up?
Well, I grew up with just my mom. I didn't know who my dad was until I was a teenager, but we grew up in low-income housing, so this apartment complex. And unfortunately, since I can remember, the criminal justice system was involved in my life. Where we lived, there was always cops coming around, always arresting people. My mom got into a little trouble and was gone for a little bit. We had a really tough time. She was a survivor of domestic violence, and she had a lot of scars from that. And where we were, it wasn't, so normalized to be divorced, to have, gone through the things that my mom did to make the choices that she had. So I always, from a little girl, was mad at the way people treated my mom, the way the system treated my mom, because she was such a good person, but she was judged so harshly.
Did you have any siblings?
Yeah, so I have 2 older brothers and 2 older sisters. I was I remember growing up, they would call me a change of life baby because my mom had me in her mid-40s. So they were much older. They had moved out. So they kind of acted like parents too. It was a weird, they were my brothers and sisters, but they definitely would tell me what to do.
Did they raise you when your mom was away?
Yep. Yeah, that's who I would stay with.
Okay, so the state allowed that because they were old enough?
Yep, I would stay with my older sisters.
And were they involved in the criminal justice world at all, your siblings?
No. They, interestingly enough, they got married really young, 14, 15 years old, and got married and moved out. They never got involved in the system. They're actually they're very religious. So, yeah, that just wasn't their story at all.
Do you think if you guys were closer in age, you might have stayed on that path too in the beginning?
Maybe. I definitely think that could have been a possibility. Yeah, if I would have had them, yeah.
How old were you when your mom went to prison?
I was in 2nd grade, and she went to our jail. And, it was horrible for me. I remember, I don't think people often, think about how incarceration affects children and how, shameful it is for them and how confusing and how the world's telling them that their parents are bad people when these are the people they love and look up to most in the world, that's a really hard spot. And I remember going to my second grade class. We lived in this very small town, and my mom was in the newspaper because if you, ran a stop sign, you were in the newspaper. Everybody has to tell it. And I saw it sitting on my teacher's desk, and I remember just wanting to melt. I was just so ashamed and embarrassed, and then that contradiction, I was angry too because I loved her, and she was good. Like, she was a good mom. She done everything that she could, she really had, being a survivor of severe trauma and what she went through. And back in those days, resources just weren't a thing. It wasn't, here, we'll help you with counseling or, and she did the best to deal with that. And sometimes it was in unhealthy ways, but yeah, it was a really, really rough situation. I'm glad she wasn't gone too long. But yeah, man, it sucks. And I think that stays with kids as they grow, forever.
Do you think people are quick to judge you and your family because of those articles without even knowing the full story?
Oh, yeah, of course. And where we lived, I remember, and I lived in Appalachia. It wasn't like there was that many rich people. It's a lot of working class, but still, kids can be cruel sometimes. So I lived in a housing complex it was Dempsey Housing. And I remember on the bus, these kids, when it was our bus stop, they would call us Dempsey dumpsters, which was so silly now, but then it was so embarrassing. You know what I mean? That's how I knew I was poor. I didn't know because that's all I knew, but that's how I knew. And then I knew being poor, you're not as good as, you're trash. You're not the same as everybody else. So I remember feeling judged for that. And then when she got in the trouble, feeling judged. So yeah, it sucked.
Were any of the teachers or administrators sticking up for you at all, or did they were encourage it?
Yeah, they were super supportive, and nobody at school ever mentioned it to me. I just saw that newspaper, so I knew they knew. So they, I had so many teachers, looking back now, that did give me a lot of attention. I was most likely to succeed in my middle school and always made really good grades and, always in AP classes and even elementary I excelled. So I remember some of them being extra nice to me. And I'm always I wonder if that's because they knew and they, wanted to look out for me. But also it was kind of a blessing that they didn't talk to me about it, but also a curse because nobody talked to me about it. Nobody talked to me about how I felt, or I wasn't able to tell anybody how scared I was, except for these two friends that I had who was going through the same thing. Their parents had been incarcerated. Their parents struggled with substance use disorder. And the three of us were best friends for years, still are, because we had each other. But there was no adult that ever was hey, are you okay? Not ever.
Now, that perspective you're describing, do you think that's one of the collateral, victims in the criminal justice system, and even in today's world where, you have a lot of people that do get arrested and their articles are put out there in negative lights, and now social media more than ever helps kind of fuel that, but we don't, hear the perspectives of their kids or their family members that are in workplaces or schools or anything like that affects them.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that affects the kids. My kids have been affected by my incarceration and having to see that. And yeah, I'm sure it's a lot like I felt, shame and hurt. And it made me feel even more different. And yeah, it's a huge collateral consequence, and it really hurts our children.
At that age, did you know what addiction was? Did you know what your mom was dealing with? Did you know any of that?
No. Like I had no clue what addiction was. I remember I started kind of learning it because of Dare. I don't know if you remember Dare.
Yeah, of course.
But then that was so extreme. And so, it's people under the bridge or people, are going to be on the corner and give you that.
It's like the cliche.
Happening.
Yeah, it's like the cliche drug addiction.
So then I was still confused. Like this, what is this? So, there wasn't like the intricacies about it or, so I'd heard about it because Dare, but it was something that I didn't understand and was very different than what was happening in my life. So I was like very confused.
How would people describe you as a kid?
I would say quiet. I was quiet. I loved nerdy. I was a little nerdy when I was young. I loved school until like my mid-teens. I think that's probably how they would describe me.
What happened in your mid-teens that made you not love school?
So around then's when I started to experiment with alcohol, with drugs. And like when I did that, all of that stuff that was bottled up, that shame, that hurt, that anger, it just quit. It was quiet. And I always felt like it was so loud. So I liked it. And then in my mid-teens, I was sexually assaulted. And that was just another huge thing that I didn't talk about it. I didn't report it. I felt like it was my fault because I'd been drinking and, so that really helped me, start to experiment more. And at the same time in my community is where OxyContin really hit. Like you see counties, just a couple counties over on shows like Dope Sick and these other, big specials and things of that nature. So there was OxyContin everywhere. And we were all experimenting. People would bring it to school. Like it was everywhere because everybody's parents were coal miners and, like you get hurt doing that kind of work. And I got in a car accident and I was prescribed Xanax and hydrocodone. And then later, oxys. And that was when it was over. Because then I had this large quantity and yeah.
And do you think before that accident you already had like an addiction developing? Or was it just kind of trying things out?
Yeah, I think it was more like then I wouldn't ever say it was completely recreational because I did use it for my mental health to take the anxiety, the depression away. But I wasn't using drugs, alcohol every day until like I had that prescription. So I'm not sure if I was like developing, I don't know.
Do you think you never would have tried drugs if you didn't go through what you went through with your mother and your family?
No, I imagine maybe because so many people try drugs. So many people try them and they're not addicted. You know what I mean? They try drugs. That's it. I was always baffled when I would see people try drugs and they're like, I don't like it. I don't like it. It makes me forget. I feel like I don't have control. And that's why I did drugs, So I definitely think I would have probably still tried them. Now, I don't know if my addiction would have developed so soon if I didn't have that trauma and the genetics that I have and things of that nature. But I probably would have tried them along the way.
What do you think would have been a substitute to the drugs, looking back on it now with everything you know?
Yeah, I think early intervention, and counseling and having someone to talk to, learning how to cope with bad things that happen, like learning and developing confidence in myself and I think those things would have went like a long way.
Now, once you got into the accident and you were prescribed the oxys, did they keep prescribing them to you?
Yeah, so that doctor actually got in trouble because, he was prescribing medicine everywhere. So around this time also, there was this big thing in Florida. So
The doctor shopping? And,
yeah. So you could go to Florida, and by then I had turned 18. So you would have people, some older people that I did drugs with by this time, because if my prescription ran out, which it did in a couple of days, I was out buying drugs. I was getting them however I could. But these older folks would do something called sponsor you. So they would pay for you. They would take you to Florida, pay for you to go to the doctor, and then you gave them a cut of the pills. And then you kept the rest. So this was just great. And you could go to more than one doctor, and you only had to go in and get this MRI. There was nothing wrong with me for real. You know what I mean? But the MRI would say, one of my discs or whatever. So I used that thing, and yeah, I go to the doctor. Sometimes I would sponsor people if I had the money, so I could try to keep my my stash, try to keep what I needed. Yeah.
How are you taking the oxys? Were you just swallowing them, or did you actually snort them? Or?
Yeah, at first it was swallowing them and then snorting them, and then I became an IV drug user, so I would inject too.
Oh, you can inject oxys?
Mm-hmm.
Does it come in a liquid form or something?
No. You just take the coating off. They used to have a time release coating. Put it in your mouth. Take a napkin, take that off. Put it in a spoon, crush it up, add some water, filter.
Wow. And how long would one oxy last you for, the effect of it?
It depended on the way that I used it. If I swallowed it because of the time release, it would last longer, but it wasn't as intense. It wasn't. And then if I injected it, a few hours. But my tolerance kept getting up there, and it was starting to cost a lot of money. I was doing a lot. So the longer that you do them, the higher your tolerance. So the less effect it has, the more you have to do. Yeah.
How are you funding your habit?
I would be sponsored. I would sponsor people in Florida. I would sell to my friends because all of it, there are so many of my classmates are dead. So many are incarcerated. Because what these shows like Dope Sick and all of this don't tell you, it shows Appalachia and these rural communities, and it shows, the doctors, things of that nature, people overdosing, but also the incarceration rates and the laws that they were passing at that time, it was wild. You were getting 5 years for one OxyContin. It was nuts. So people were dying, people were incarcerated. Yeah.
Do you think that was the wrong way to handle it?
Absolutely. I think it was the wrong way. Yeah. I remember when I knew that I wanted help. I had one son, and by miracle, God's grace and mercy, I was just able to quit. I don't know how. Obviously, I was pretty sick at the beginning of my pregnancy, but I didn't tell my OBGYN that I was, quitting cold turkey. But that pregnancy was fine. I had my baby, and I swore the whole time I was pregnant, it was going to be different. I was going to be there for him. I was never going to miss a T-ball game or first steps or, anything he ever needed. He's going to have his mom, it's going to be better. It's just going to be better. I'm going to go back to college, all of these things I wanted to do. And when I had him, even though there had been that break from use, I still hadn't dealt with anything. I still hadn't dealt with anything. And honestly, as soon as I had him, they gave me the pain medication in the hospital and it was over. You know, like I felt good again. I felt relief again. And I started using again. So I wanted to go to a rehab. There was no rehabs where I live. There was one that was 30 days for guys and girls, and the wait list was like 6 weeks long. There was another one like 45 minutes away from me. It was a detox, so 7 to 11 days. Back then, there wasn't Obamacare, so I had to pay to go, and it cost like $600, which is not bad, you know, but I went and sold drugs to get the money to go to a detox. And still 7 to 11 days wasn't enough. And I remember like before I left, like I didn't want to leave. Like I was scared. I was like, I still want to get high. Like I'm still like having nightmares, you know, because I had PTSD from the assault. You know, I had a lot of stuff going on. And they just said, here's some AA meetings. There's one about 20 minutes away from you. I didn't have a car because I sold it for drugs. I pawned it for drugs. So the walk was forever. It's freezing cold. So I got home and I used again. Like there was no, but I kept trying. I wanted to get better so bad. I got pregnant again. And I went on MOUD during that pregnancy for a large portion of it because the doctor was scared if I just quit, you know, that could harm the baby. Like I could have a miscarriage. So I did what I was supposed to during that pregnancy. And then 5 months later, I had a 5-year-old and a 5-month-old. We were in the bed, my 2 little boys. And I was on MOUD. Like I was trying to keep that up, trying to do better. And with a no-knock warrant, they busted my doors down. My oldest son still remembers. Came in, weapons, you know, it was a freaking SWAT team. You know, I was like 24 with these 2 little kids asleep and came and, you know, took me away. And I remember even saying, like, I'm on medication, like I'm trying to be in recovery. Can I take that? And they said, they're like, no, like you're going to jail. And, you know, honestly, like during that time, I had tried so many times, man, to get help. Like I had tried so many times. Yeah, and that's where I'd been to county jail a bunch, you know, like a lot, like for public intoxication, you know, in these little rural places, like they will take you for.
They could jam you up for everything.
Oh my God. Yeah. I have enough public intoxications for, you know, whew. But I'd never had a felony. And they wouldn't tell me, you know, at that moment I said, what am I going to jail for? Like, what's going on? Like, it was such overkill, this big SWAT team, you know. They're like, it's a sealed indictment. We'll tell you at the station. And I like remember hugging my babies. You know, they were yelling at me like, give them to your mom, because I was staying with her at the time. And I handed them over. And then literally for years, I didn't see them. And I remember just thinking, I wish I would have held them a little tighter. I wish that I remembered what Jaden was wearing that day, how tall he was. You know, I wish that I would have just told him what a strong, smart little boy he was. You know, because for my incarceration, that was the worst, was being separated from them.
Where was the father of your kids at that time?
Well, my youngest son, his father was actually a co-defendant. So we weren't together at the moment. So he was arrested in a different location. I got 2 trafficking charges. This guy that I went to high school with that used to live with me, we weren't in a relationship. You know, we just got high together, hang out together. I had sold him an OxyContin, a Roxy 30. So I got 5 years for that. And then I got a complicity because I was in the same room when my baby's father sold a pill. So I got another 5 years for that.
Was he an undercover, the guy you sold to? He was cooperating with them?
Yeah, they paid him money. And you know what was so sad? I was so angry. Man, I was so angry at him because, like, literally when he had nowhere to go, like, I let him stay with us. And probably about a year ago, I was going up a holler because we have those where I live, and I saw him, man, walking down the street. He looked like he weighed about 90 some pounds. His face was sunk in. Like, he looked so bad. And, like, I prayed for him. You know what I mean? Like, because while he was an informant, they were giving him money to be an informant. And he was getting high. like the cops were getting him high. Like, for real. He would take that money and go buy drugs.
Why do you think these, like, small towns or even states, came up with this idea that, okay, one pill or a few drugs equals all these years in prison, and yours was a nonviolent situation? Like, why? I feel like a lot of our criminal justice problems are because of this thinking from years ago.
Yeah, the whole war on drugs. Here's this thinking. Because I think they're going to stop the demand, stop the supply by criminalizing folks, by giving these harsh sentences. And obviously, like, we have decades of proof to show that does not work. Our incarceration rates continue to go up, and our overdose rates. So I think it's this misguided fact that if you're in addiction, like, we can just throw you away, doing that time will cure it, and it will all be better. Yeah, so I think it's people that some folks think are disposable, honestly. Like, these are folks that, do drugs. They're not part of our community. Like, they're different. And it's a lot easier to lock people up or get them out of sight if you don't want to deal with the real issues that they have. And if we could deal with those, like, those real, like, root causes and conditions, like, when I was younger, like, why I had to use drugs to not want to, I don't want to say, like, not be here. Like, I couldn't be here without using drugs. It hurt so bad. Like, if we could have fixed that, if somebody could fix that, like, in those problems, it would be a different world, for real. And if I had the resources, it would, I truly believe that's what our campaign's all about.
Are you guys looking for a nicotine experience that actually keeps things fresh? Enter Lucy Breakers, the 100% pure nicotine tobacco-free pouches that put you in control of your flavor. Each pouch has a built-in flavor capsule. Just pop it open when you're ready for a burst of extra taste and hydration. I've been loving tropical mango. I'm a big mango, guys. It's got that smooth, fruity hit that makes my nicotine routine feel way more enjoyable. And the best part, Lucy delivers straight to your door, so you never have to worry about running out. Let's level up your nicotine routine with Lucy. Go to lucy.co/IANBICK and use promo code IANBICK to get 20% off your first order. And if it's not for you, no worries. Lucy offers a 30-day refund policy. Again, that's lucy.co/IANBICK and use code IANBICK for 20% off. And here's the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every order is age verified. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
A lot of the people I interviewed, they have been able to get, sober in prison because they have no other options. They're kind of forced to be in that environment. So I feel like whoever came up with this thinking has the time aspect of it right, but the environment aspect of it wrong. Because a lot of these individuals, too, you're putting them in a place with other criminals or violent offenders, and they're just turning out bad or putting them in dangerous situations. So I wonder if they just started with the whole rehab thing to begin with, or a safe place to put, just nonviolent drug offenders, it could have been a different situation.
Yeah, I mean, definitely another at that point I was already seeking treatment. I was trying to be in treatment. Like, I was selling drugs to go to detox. I mean, that's madness for one thing, but like, on the front end, like, if they would have offered me treatment then, like, I wouldn't have had to miss my kids for years. I miss my baby's first words, his first steps. I miss kindergarten graduation. Like, I will never have that back, and they won't either. And that still hurts them, like, to this day. So in jail, like, if we look at overdose, like, you are 39 times more likely than the general public to die of an overdose the first 2 weeks from leaving jail or prison. So that doesn't, it's great that some people, I want people to get help, be in recovery, like, no matter where they are, but incarcerating people is also killing them.
Could there have been another alternative for you when you had your pregnancy aside from painkillers? Like, did you need those painkillers at the time? Because you were clean for your whole pregnancy.
No, like, my first pregnancy, I wasn't on anything. My second, I was on MOUD, which is Suboxone, like medication for opioid use disorder. So that was what the OBGYN gave me. That isn't as harsh as an opioid, and it wouldn't risk the effects of having withdrawal, because the fetus you can miscarry. So that's what I was on. I was on pain pills. And then I gradually worked with him to lower the dose, where I was able to get off of those a few months before I had the baby.
Now, do you think if you were on that the first pregnancy, it would have been better for you? Because you had mentioned you took painkillers after that pregnancy, which is what got you back on the track.
So after I had, okay, my bad. Maybe. I mean, anything I think would have been better for me. Like, when I was pregnant, if, like, I was, like, in outpatient treatment, you know what I mean, and talking to a psychiatrist, if I was on MOUD, like, I was nothing. I was just cold turkey, not using drugs or alcohol. I wanted to be better, but I felt miserable. Like, my baby's daddy was still using drugs at the time, going out and living his life. And I was, like, so bitter. I was so mad at him, I thought. But really, I was jealous because I felt so horrible. And I saw him getting that relief, and I wanted it. So during that pregnancy, if I did have MOUD, and did have counseling or things that I needed to fix the reason why I wanted to get high 24 hours a day, I think that would have helped so much. I mean, because I was, like, a hateful pregnant woman. Like, I was miserable, and I didn't even know that's what it was. I didn't even know that's what it was.
What was going on with your mom at that point? Did you guys have a relationship?
Yeah. I mean, I went back to live with her. My mom is amazing. She is this, I'm from, like, 30 minutes from Loretta Lynn, where she was born, like Butcher Holler. So we are, like, Appalachian. And she is just amazing. She's a strong woman. She always taught me to care about people. I remember often we would have, like, people that would be sleeping on our couch or just at our house. She would be feeding, like, all the little kids in the apartment complex. So when she got home, she continued to do that. But she dealt with some of her problems in a way that probably wasn't the most constructive, but still she was a good person. Now me, I would get to points where I could not function. You know what I mean? Like, where my addiction was so severe that, but when I was in prison, she wrote me constantly. She was my best friend. She did end up having a lot of lung problems. She had emphysema and some other stuff. She smoked those long menthol cigarettes, like Virginia Slims, USA Gold, Salem's. So she smoked those forever. And she ended up a few years ago, she was dying. She was passing away. And I got to be there and got to hold her hand while she took her last breath. And she was so proud of me. She was so, so proud of me because she kept thinking that I would die. I'd overdosed so many times. And I was so miserable. She just wanted me to be happy. And, she got that. And my boys, by then I was able to see them and they got to see her. So I'm just really thankful that she got that before she went.
Yeah, I feel like that's every parent's wish to see their child successful, especially after they go through all the negative stuff. I know, my dad's just happy to see everything I've been able to build.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't think, I wouldn't know what to think if he had passed away before, I got to go on to the path I'm on now, because then he would only have seen the bad times. But at least he knows now that, I'm good and will be good.
Yeah, it would break my heart when I was locked up and people's I don't know if this ever happened. People you knew while you were locked up, their parents would die while they were in prison. Oh, that was such a fear of mine, and it was just heartbreaking. I remember sometimes, they couldn't even get furloughs to go to the funeral. But yeah, I was always scared that, she would never get to see me come out the other side. So I'm really grateful.
When you finally met your dad as a teenager or knew about him, what did you learn about him? Did he have any addiction issues or?
He did not. He was a Vietnam vet, former coal miner, very straight-laced, good guy, and I hated him. And it wasn't anything to do with him. I was just so mad. I was just so mad and hurt for so many years. It became my personality for real. And I was just so mad because, where were you? Where were you when this stuff was happening? Where were you? And honestly, he didn't even know about me. He didn't know. Yeah, I think my mom made that choice for a reason. I don't know why. I think maybe she was scared that somebody might take me. I don't know. I can't speak on that. She's not. But he tried to have a relationship. He even moved me and my mom he bought a house and moved us in it. I was full blown too. So he just did not even know what to do. And my mom, like I said, she was strong. She was a firecracker, honey. And she would lay into him. It was this poor man. But now we have a really good relationship. He's in his 80s. So now I take him to all doctor's appointments. He stayed with me for about a year after open heart surgery. I'm his only kid. He's never been married. So now we get to have this really good relationship.
That's
but he
good.
did not. This poor man, he was this bachelor, he had retired. He'd worked so hard, and here we came. You know what I mean? He didn't know what to do.
Tell us what happened after you got arrested, whether, you went to trial or took a plea deal, what that all looked like.
Yeah, so I got arrested, went to county jail, detox. Like I said, I'd been on that Suboxone, that MOUD, and they said, no, you can't bring it. So, dude, I was so freaking sick. I was so sick. I'd also had an abscess because I'd had a relapse probably 3 weeks before, but then got back on my medication. But I had an abscess from using drugs, and it had started to get infected. I didn't know what was going on with it, but there started to be red lines shooting up my arm. I started getting a really high fever, and then I started hallucinating. It was so terrible, and they kept me in the drunk tank. I thought I could hear my baby crying because, he was only 5 months, my youngest, when I left. And so I was screaming for my baby. It was horrible. It was so horrible. And then I would know where I was and then realize no, your kids are gone. And then it was just Oh, it was so horrible. And throwing up and all the other stuff that comes with detox. Finally, thank God, they took me to a doctor to take care of that infection. Thank goodness. But I was in there a couple of weeks and I got out on pretrial before, sentencing. And what I had to do was something called monitored controlled release. So I had to get up every day and call a phone number to see if I needed to drug test. And then I would have to go take the drug test. Well, I wasn't allowed my MOUD. I wasn't allowed to take Suboxone. I had no car. There's no NA meetings, no AA meetings. And yeah, it just wasn't going to happen. I couldn't quit using drugs. I just couldn't. I couldn't figure out. Yeah. So then one day I called. They didn't. I passed the drug test for a little bit, because you can whatever. And then I called one day and they said, no, you don't have to test. Later on, which they never did, in the afternoon, they called and said, oh, you need to come on over and take a drug test. We messed up on your color today. I was like, oh, no, you didn't. You know what I mean? They got me. They've had results. One of these tests that I've tried to pass has came back. So I ran. I went on the run. I ended up living in this trailer with this individual. The grass had grown up to the windows. I was using a lot of drugs. A lot of opioids, a lot of methamphetamine. I would hallucinate. It was so horrible. My kids, I wasn't allowed to have any contact, since the night I was arrested. Social services put them with their paternal grandparents. So I was just miserable. I was just so miserable. And I remember one night, I just sat there and thought, I can't live this way. I won't live this way. And that's the day I thought I was going to do something really bad to myself. And then, I'm not religious at all, but I'm spiritual, I guess. And back then, I prayed or, it wasn't even, I didn't even know how to pray correctly, I just knew, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. I wanted to see my kids again someday. So the next day, I turned myself in, which is wild. The jail didn't even know what to do. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah. So here I am. I did bring a lot of drugs in the jail with me. Hopefully I don't get in trouble for that now. But I'm the only one that used them. But yeah, so I sat in county for months. When I went to my court date, they said, we already gave you an opportunity when we let you out pretrial. We wanted to see what you would do. So, no, you're getting 5 years. We'll put them together, but you're getting 5 years. So that's what happened.
And this was a federal or a state case?
State.
State case. Okay. I had the monitoring thing too. I didn't even have a drug case, but they made you call every day to see if you had to go in. It was so silly.
Why did you have,
they were just trying to jam me up, but I didn't do drugs. I didn't even smoke weed back then. So they would call. So I remember sometimes I would go in twice a week because that's how they would try to trick you. You go in and then you think you're in the clear. Because when I first started out, it was just no, no, no. Then you'd have one, then no, no, no. And they think you're on a routine and then bam, they hit you 2 days in a row. Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
And dude, I had to hire people to take me for these because it wasn't until I was 2 years sober that I could finally figure out where my daggone car was because it had been pawned this whole time to this guy up the road. So I had to hire people to take me to these drug tests, and I was giving them drugs to take me to this drug test. It was just a wild life. But yeah, I ended up going to prison, which was not where I wanted to be.
Where did they send you?
Kentucky Correctional Institute for Women, so Pee Wee Valley. At the time, there was only 2 women's prisons. So Pee Wee's where they hold maximum security folks too. So that's where the women on death row is. But they can hold lower offenses as well. So that's where I went. We also had a private women's prison that had just closed down. So all the women from there was at my prison as well. That one closed down because horrible like sexual assaults, a lot of medical neglect, like the assistant warden off themselves at the so
Wow.
it's now reopened and houses men. But yeah, so I was, and the day that I came, I said, can I get into a treatment program? Because I had to make it, because after county jail, I used drugs in there for a while, and then was like, okay, I'm going to try this, and didn't do drugs the whole time I was in prison, and said, I could have, and said, can I get into a treatment program, like the first day? And they put me on a waiting list. I never got in that program the whole time I was there. I wasn't even, like, I was still, like, so far down the waiting list because they didn't have enough slots. And so many of the women there were in there for drug-related offenses, and not just in there for drug-related offenses, but had substance use disorder. Like I mentioned earlier, everybody that uses drugs doesn't have a substance use disorder. Like some people, I'm not one of those people. But they didn't have enough program beds. So I just did, I did my time.
What was the setting like? Because there was different classifications of women in there. Like, was it dorms? Was it cells?
So there was the AC dorm, so where everybody goes before they're classified. That's also like where, people go. Then there was a building called Lonnie Watson, so that was a medical dorm. So it's where all your pregnant women, the pregnant women in prison, man. Oh, God. All your pregnant women, people that are elderly, people that have terminal illnesses, that's where they go. In Lonnie Watson, it's medical. And then there was 2 other dorms, regular dorms, and then there was something called MSU, which was technically outside the gates. There was another gate, but that's where your lowest level security, like you had to, meet all these requirements to finally get out there. Eventually, I got out there and thought I was living the life. But yeah, that's how it works to make it the multi level.
What were you most surprised by being in a woman's prison? Like, what was the most shocking thing to you? Because you never really know until it happens to you.
I remember one of my first shocks is like when I first got there. I'd been to county jail and searched a million times, but they got us off the bus because it was like a shipment of us from different jails. And when they all had us stripped down in this one big room and just poured, like chugged delouser. You see how long my hair is. So they just chugged it all over my head. It was freezing. And it was like, welcome to prison. So I remember that was a huge shock. Really shocking.
What was that for, like lice or something?
Yeah.
And what is delouser?
That's medicine to get rid of lice.
Even if you don't have lice, they're still dumping
everybody had to do it. Yeah.
I've heard of some prisons like hosing the people down too with like water and stuff. Did they do that, or they just hit your hair?
No, they didn't do that. They just poured it on our heads, and then there were showers, a room of showers, like with no curtains, and we had to go in there.
Wow.
It was it was like really welcome to prison. I think that I was shocked that I couldn't get into substance use disorder treatment because I thought it was for corrections. Then I tried to do college classes and got in this horticulture class, and they cut the funding. So that was shocking. Like, what are we correcting here? We're just all sitting around or doing these jobs to make 80 cents a day. Like, what is happening? And it was shocking how much I loved the women. Like how, and their stories, like how sad it was. I remember I was incarcerated with a woman who had been physically and sexually abused for years. And the person that did it had shot her in the face. And the side of her face was, just torn to pieces. And she was in there on a drug crime. She had developed a substance use disorder. And it was like the same thing. They didn't help her. She didn't have any. It was just so sad.
How did you spend your time in there? What was like a typical day like?
So when I was in horticulture, that was like my favorite part. We got to go out into the garden and plant flowers, and that I loved that so much. It was like I got to disappear. I wasn't there. I really got to like think that I was in a different place. So it really sucked when they cut that. And I also started running. I'd never been a runner, but I gained so much weight in county jail. Like I'd gained like 40 pounds because after I detoxed off the opiates, like I just ate sugar all the time. So I started running. That was another thing. Like I would run on the treadmill and pretend like I was going somewhere, which is nuts. But I would, anything to like trick my mind into not feeling the way that I did. It's something I did around my kids too. I would disassociate because it hurt too bad. So I'd have to like imagine these things because I just could, like my reality was so freaking painful. So I would run. I done the horticulture. I wrote a lot. I wrote a lot of poetry while I was in there. And I still have that. And my sons have gotten to see it now that they're older because it was so often about them. It's something that really means a lot to them. And I'd hang out with my friends, like the things that you do. We'd have a dinner of noodles and summer sausages and, some desserts, fudge rounds and peanut butter. And, we would watch movies. I remember, so I told you I'm like pre-nerdy. But back then, Harry Potter, the Harry Potter movies were coming out. So it was really a big deal for me. A lot of people didn't watch Harry Potter in there, And I remember going out to the day room and my friend Melissa, who was amazing, like took over the TV and was just like, everybody shut up. Panda Bear's going to watch Harry Potter.
That's what they called you, Panda Bear?
Yeah, that's been my nickname forever. And then some of the women would call me Loretta Lynn because of my accent.
Okay. But didn't all the women have accents in there because of Kentucky?
No.
Really?
No, Kentucky's this accent's Eastern Kentucky.
Okay, that's the only people I've met then because everyone I meet from Kentucky has your accent. And I love it. I love a good accent.
Yeah. That's... And music, like there would be, I remember like when we could get CDs, we would get them. But I remember Nikki Sixx had this like sideshow countdown or whatever. And we'd all listen to that every week. That was a big deal. And then reading. I read a lot of books.
What about your job? Did you have one you were talking about?
Yeah. So when I was in horticulture, that got to count as my job. So that was cool. But like I said, I only got to do it for a while. And then I was on the clean team for a little bit. So what I did was wear an orange vest and walked around the whole prison and wiped off doorknobs and railings. I sanitized them. So I did that for a minute. And then I got like the job. I cleaned the warden's walk and the visiting center, which, dude, was, this is a horrible story, but I'm going to tell it because it's just real. But you know how hungry you are when you're incarcerated for like good food, good food. And we could order out once a month, but they would take that from us sometimes. And plus, I didn't have a lot of money. So we would clean up there and visitors would come in. I remember one time they had like this photography class or something out there. And they had gotten steaks, honey, like steaks from Outback or somewhere. And people had thrown away like half steaks, like ribeye and sirloin.
And you ate it.
We ate them. There was like 4 of us. We cut around and we ate it. I probably shouldn't have just said that on podcast.
It was probably pretty good, though.
It was. We were, prison food.
Terrible.
Oh, my sweet glory.
What were they serving there?
Yeah, I don't know if humans should eat it. So it's Aramark, of course, but the only good day was we had like a loaded nacho day. But then besides that, a lot of mystery meat in patty form, oddly shaped patties, a lot of like canned vegetables here and there. The portions were never that good. And you have like no time to eat. Like they always put you out there like right before count time. So you have to shovel it in. For a long time, I ate that fast too. Like I would, like when I came out and started going to college and then getting decent jobs, I would have like business lunches and I was just like shoveling in. I'm
Yeah,
like,
my
oh,
friends ripped me for that too. But like in federal prison, I always ate fast. They give you time, but my thing was like I always wanted to find an empty seat, and I would eat fast before someone could, put me in a position where they're like, "That's my seat."
Yeah.
I just want to get in and get out quick.
Yep. I mean, it's
You got to do what you got to do.
yeah, it's learned behaviors and it's hard to shake. Yeah. That was with me with like shower times too. I used to kill it out, you know what I mean? But yeah.
How long did you end up serving on a 5-year sentence?
In there, only 13 months. And then I went to a DOC halfway house for 17 months.
Oh, that's good that they let you do a halfway house for a while. So it was about 30 months altogether.
Yep. And then I was on parole a few months. So luckily, like Kentucky, I know a lot of states don't, but we do have parole. And yeah, so I was on parole for a second.
What was your plan when you got out, if you had a plan?
To go home. I just wanted to go home. I wanted to go home. And yeah, like after I got out of that halfway house, they had a treatment program there. I was like, okay, I'll participate in this, but still, I just want to go home. But that's like where I met these people like me that were in recovery and had been formerly incarcerated and had been, and it changed my life. Those people, like prison, in my opinion, did not help me in any way. It just didn't. But that, like you said, that other environment and those people, and I started like taking care of my trauma, and I didn't feel like my skin was on fire all the time, or that I didn't want to be the person that I was. So yeah, and so after I got done with that program and I could go home, I didn't want to. Like I wanted to do better. I was in a big city. They sent me to Louisville. Compared to where I'm from, that's like a huge city. And I thought, I want to take advantage of this right now. Like I want to go to college. Like I want to get on my feet so I can be a good mom. Like unfortunately, with the amount of time that I was in prison, that's like neglect. So I'd lost custody of my kids, but their grandparents still let me talk to them and would like let me be part of their life. So I was like, I'm gonna like work on myself. So I ended up actually staying there for a few years. I mean, it was quite a while, and yeah, and at first, like it was really hard to find a place to live, of course, because I don't think people think about it a whole lot, but it's so easy. A population that's so easy. And actually, that's kind of like applauded and encouraged almost to support is formerly incarcerated people. Like if you have a felony on your record, like rent, they can charge you whatever because nobody else will rent to you. Like I remember the place that we found. Thank God we finally found a place because my parole officer's like, "You're going to go back to prison if you don't figure something out." And I knew if I went home, it just wouldn't be good because I didn't have like the recovery support. I wasn't even allowed in a gas station in my county. That's the only place you could work. There was no job. So like I couldn't even get gas anywhere. Like how was I I was banned. So that apartment, yeah, I lived in this little closet, started trying to get jobs. I had 3 jobs at once. I was a house cleaner. I worked at a drug and alcohol counseling center as like a receptionist, and then I catered. Yeah, that's how I got money for my first month's rent was I worked at the Kentucky Derby. Never been as like, like a spectator, but I worked there, and I worked like on Millionaire's Row. So like they just throw money out, which was awesome. And I made enough to, pay my deposit and first month's rent. And so I had that all paid. I had the paper to show my parole officer I was going to move into this house, and I almost got revoked. I almost got revoked and sent back to prison to finish the rest of my sentence because I worked at the Kentucky Derby.
So they were counting that as a violation?
Because of alcohol.
That's so silly.
And thank God. Like she, I had a good parole officer. I'm so thankful because anybody else, like that would have been it, but thank God she just
yelled. It really makes a difference. Like
yeah, she just yelled at me. She just yelled at me and was like, make money some other way. But good. I'm glad you got a house. So, yeah, so I did that, the 3 jobs, the closet apartment, and then saved up enough money to buy a car. It was a piece of work, but it ran, and decided I wanted to go back to college. Started going to college for social work. I would go at nights and then on the weekend and then work all between there. I owed child support from when I was incarcerated. They charged me while I was in there, even though I couldn't. I only made $1 a day. So I paid that off, thank goodness. Paid off all those fines and fees that they can send you back for because I was scared to death. And yeah, I did that for a while. And then that halfway house that I used to be at had a job opening, that place that I used to hate, but with the recovery program. But I took that job because I wanted to be like the person, like I said, that's what changed my view was people that are formerly incarcerated, people in recovery. And I wanted to be that for somebody else. So I started working there and ran it. At one point, I ran the whole thing. So I was working with my ex-parole officer, which was interesting. Like it was a real weird power dynamic. Yeah, and I love that. It was so fulfilling. I saw so many great things, and then I saw so many sad things.
Why social work? What made you get into that for college?
Yeah, I think it was, like I said, those people that I met that were like me and that helped me deal with my problems. And I definitely think that's why. And I felt like, I needed to pay that forward, do the same thing.
How long did it take to reintegrate yourself with your kids and get that back?
Yeah, so after the halfway house, near the end of it, I got to have a pass to go back to visit. So I got to see them after a couple years, and that was huge. Like my oldest son remembered me, my youngest didn't, and was scared of me. He called somebody else mom. Oh, it was heartbreaking. It hurt so bad. And then I just kept slowly building. When I got a car and finally got off parole, I went home on the weekends. It was like a 3-hour drive. I would go there, though, and their grandparents would let me come and visit. And then eventually their grandparents let them stay all night with me at my sister's house back home. And then eventually they let them come spend spring break with me in Louisville. And then a couple years ago, my oldest son moved in with me.
Aww.
Yeah. And then my youngest spends huge amounts of time with me. But, it's a little harder for him because he was so little, 5 months old. But I'm hoping one day I just keep working at it.
How did you transition into what you do now?
Yeah, so I was working at that place, the halfway house, and I dealt with parents all the time because people would overdose. That's a thing, and I was definitely really into the recovery community. So a father had called me and said his daughter was 19. She had died in a jail in Indiana, detoxing. They hadn't checked on her for over 12 hours. And he would just call and talk to me. And one day he had called and said, I really wish somebody could do something. I said, me too, but it isn't me, me too, like me too. And the next day, there's this job description, like job posting that my boss sent me. She's like, I don't want you to leave, but check this out. And it was for the ACLU of Kentucky. And it was around criminal justice reform and advocacy. And it said on there, if you are formally incarcerated, you are strongly encouraged to apply. I was like, what? You just heard how much, I was working 3 jobs. I was all over the place because I couldn't find a steady job before the halfway house. So I'd never seen a job posting that actually said, hey, like, come try to get this job. So I started working there. I started working at the ACLU, working on criminal justice bills. I had no clue what I was doing. About a weekend, they said I was a lobbyist. I had no clue what a lobbyist was. I couldn't even vote. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, okay. And when I went, I would go to our state capitol and I'd look around, and there's like no formally incarcerated people. There's no people in recovery. But there's sheriffs, there's cops, there's judges, there's prosecutors, there's the industries that make money at the prisons. All of them were there in those committee rooms and everywhere else. And all the legislators was talking about us, but we weren't there. I was like, this is not right. This doesn't make any sense. Like what they're saying is, not even, it wasn't even cruel sometimes. It was just misinformed, like, because we weren't there. So I started a group called, with my friend, Senator Keturah Herron in Kentucky. Back then she wasn't a senator. But we started a group called Kentucky Smart Justice Advocates, which were formerly incarcerated Kentuckians that came to Frankfort, which is our capital, to work on criminal justice and recovery bills. So we started doing that and started working with anybody that would work with us. We couldn't wait and only work with you if you were a Democrat or only if you were a Republican. The people that we were fighting for and loved the most were dying or were behind bars. Like, we couldn't wait. Like, that didn't matter to us. Like, we want to work on good policy. Will you work on it with us? Cool. And that was really successful. Like, we were able to pass over a dozen bills, and we would work with businesses. We would work with faith leaders, law enforcement, and it was just amazing. And the people in that group, like when we fought so hard in these big coalitions, and we would get a win, and they would know, like, this is going to affect thousands of Kentuckians. Like, this story that you told about the worst thing ever, this is what it's going to do. And, like, what that would mean, it's amazing. It's amazing, So I did that. And then now I get to do that on an even cooler level. I get to work at dream.org on our Public Health is Public Safety campaign, which really centers directly impacted people. And the campaign is all about changing from a culture of criminalization to care. And what that looks like is more resources. Just like you hit on earlier, alternatives to incarceration. Is there a way that we can deal with this for a recovery program or getting somebody in to mental health support as opposed to just incarcerating them? Like, is there a way that we can really, and that makes us safer? Like, those outcomes are better. Our communities thrive. So that's what it's all about. And we do that, just like I said earlier, like, willing to work. Doesn't matter your political party. Doesn't matter your religious background, race, gender. Like, we all want to work together with you on this because, overdose, the criminal legal system, affects every single person.
Absolutely. Now, you were saying that earlier that, you didn't think prison had done anything for you in that moment. But do you realize after what you've been able to achieve that it kind of, in a way, indirectly helped you because it gave you the experience you needed to do your job now, essentially?
Yeah, I think that's that silver lining. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't go back and change my past. You know, sometimes I think I would because of my kid. You know what I mean? But, you know, I'm always scared, like one of those science fiction movies. If you do it, it'll make it worse. So, yeah, prison made me understand, like, the resilience that I had. It lit a fire in me to, you know, to get to understand the system better, that's really where kind of that spark and started at. So yeah, I definitely think that silver lining, because anybody can work on criminal justice reform, but like you and I both know, it's different when you've lived it. You know, we're going to bring perspectives to the table that you can't have looking from the outside in. So I am grateful for that perspective, and I wouldn't have had it without that past. Like I said, those folks telling their story and passing those bills, it's using this thing for good. So I'm really grateful.
How can people that want to help you guys and what you guys have going on?
Yeah, so people can text the word CARE to 97483 to join the campaign. We work on federal bills. We're working on a bill right now that Vice President J.D. Vance actually sponsored last year. A bunch of Democrats, a bunch of Republicans sponsored it, but it's called the Reentry Act. And what it does is allows Medicaid 30 days before someone leaves jail or prison. This would be huge. Like I said earlier, people are more likely to die of an overdose. This helps people before they leave, make sure that they're connected to healthcare on the outside, substance use disorder programming, helps with case management. So we're working on a lot of different federal bills. We're working on the Clean Slate bill that expungement. It makes expungement automated so people can get that horrible, like, scarlet letter off their background. And then we work in states all across the nation. We work on bills, around Good Samaritan. So when someone overdoses, you can call for help without getting arrested. In some states, if you're on probation and parole and you call for help for someone, you can be revoked. There's nothing so people are dying. We work on a bunch of different things, a bunch of decriminalization and putting drug issues more in the public health space as opposed to the criminal justice space. So we definitely need people to come and work with us and help us get some of this stuff done. And go pass a bill that's going to help thousands of people. You'll feel, and if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah, I was just talking to someone yesterday that is in New Jersey, and they have the Clean Slate bill that they just passed or they have now, and it's really helped him get his felonies off his record, which is huge.
It's absolutely huge. It's absolutely huge. I got a pardon a few years ago, and it was like one of the best feelings of my whole entire life. My son was so excited, over the moon. And Clean Slate, getting a pardon from the governor was hard. I had tried for years, 2 different governors. So Clean Slate and just having that expungement process automated, oh my God, that's amazing. It gives people hope.
Do you think they'll ever do that on the federal level?
We're working on a federal bill to do that.
For Clean Slate?
Mm-hmm.
What
yes, Ian.
What are the specifics for that? The criteria?
Yeah, so we have to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to certain offenses, those will be automated. But then other offenses that are nonviolent, there can be a petition expungement process. You would be able to at least take that step to get that done. Like you do in a lot of states. And then eventually, obviously we would like it all to be automated. But
So
yeah, you can work on that with us, Ian.
Yeah, maybe mine would fall in because mine are all non-violent.
Yeah, we have to check that
charges.
out for real.
Yeah, but the law's not passed yet, right?
Nope,
Okay.
no. There'll be a new bill introduced because the new Congress, but yeah, it was a bipartisan bill. I mean, my senator from Kentucky, Senator Rand Paul, was actually the sponsor in the Senate, and a bunch of other R's and Democrats. So yeah, and I even think, truthfully, under the Trump administration, they passed the First Step Act, which has let so many people out of jail or prison, and that was a bipartisan effort. So I really hope, I know there's a lot of political divide right now. Like, I know that. And there's a lot of hurt, and, I understand all of that. But I hope that criminal justice reform may be somewhere that we can come together in this country and get some more stuff done. I'm hopeful. I always have to be hopeful. I work with politicians, you know what I mean, and in policy. So, but I really am hopeful, though, that we may be able to get some cool stuff done.
Definitely. What advice would you give to your younger self, your teenage self, if you could stand right next to her today?
Be nice to yourself. Be nicer to yourself. You're okay. You're just be nice. I beat myself up a whole lot. Yeah, for sure.
Well, Amanda, thank you so much for coming here today and sharing your incredible story. And, I wish you the best of luck with everything you got going on.
Thank you, Ian. It was great. Appreciate it.
And you did great, too.
Okay, awesome.